Hello and welcome to Low-Code Campfire. This is the episode 172 for Friday, November 15th. This is another Open Lines Friday, so we'll talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. I have a few prepared topics, but hopefully it'll be a good hour we spend together. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant and App, and I'm running solo today. Patrick is at an undisclosed location. We get together and do this every Friday, or almost every Friday. I think we have a holiday coming up where we might skip one. But we get together, talk about what's going on with Plant and App, what's going on in our individual projects, and maybe solve some problems or show some new techniques, talk about what we've learned. But this is open to everyone. We do encourage you, if you're watching us on video, to join us live sometime. We record all these and put them out on YouTube. So youtube.com/plantandapp has a playlist full of all of these past episodes. And every week when we do this, we run the same agenda. We say hello because we're a friendly group, and then we go around the campfire with some things like always starting with first call, but anything you submit in advance, and then we talk about some other things. And then after an hour or so, we go into our Afterglow segment where we turn off the recording and just hang out for a few more minutes. So do engage with us. Meeting format, so just wait your turn, raise your hand, get involved. You can submit questions and topics in advance using this QR code. It'll get you to a form where you can submit those, or you can send anything you'd like us to talk about to support@plantandapp.com. Introductions and hello. It's a familiar group today. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support.
Hello,
Good morning,
everyone. Good morning.
Hello.
Did anyone come with something that they wanted to share or talk about? Don, you're tempted. All right.
No, I don't have anything today.
Great. Oh, okay. So let's see if I can provoke something here. First of all, I finally fixed my graph. So this is our graph of version adoption, and we're slowly increasing adopters of version 126. That's the current version, which we released in June. We're working on our version 127. 126, as far as I know, is it's as good a version as we've put out. And
Excuse me, Dale.
yes,
Are you intending to share your screen?
crap. All right, now I have to start all over. Yes, I was intending.
No, you are sharing your screen, Dale. You are. I'm looking at the slide now.
I'm seeing it as well.
Same here.
Then it's me.
You're a troublemaker. I was afraid I was going to have to start all over again. Let's see. Now I'm in a screen sharing dialog. Tell you what, I am going to stop and reshare. Maybe Mark will get brought into the mix here.
Thank you. That's made a difference.
Excellent.
See it now.
So yes, I was doing version adoption. 126 is as good as it gets, and I would hope that you would make plans to move that way. There's a couple of good reasons to. One is that as we release the new version, you'll be in position to take advantage of that when you're ready. Another is that support happens on the most current versions. When you're versions behind, there's very little hope of actually getting a patch to the old versions. We rarely do that. We always do them in the new and current versions. And yeah, and then I think within the probably the biggest thing is that the underlying platform DNN is at 9.13 something, and there are many new and perhaps essential features within that version. So our official support for 9.13 will begin when we get to 127. So anyway, lots of good reasons to upgrade. I've added that as a topic to put in our newsletter. You should have gotten a newsletter from us this week. Did everyone get a newsletter?
Yes, I think I did.
I did.
If there's anything that any way that can be improved, I could certainly take that as a topic either for here or offline. But we're trying to provide good, relevant, and regular information out through the newsletter. Anyway, that's version check-in. Anybody have any comment on that or reasons why you're holding back other than the standard needing to find the time?
I'm going to chime in here, Dale. I upgraded a website yesterday to 1.26, and I think I'm reaping the benefits. I know I've said it before, but I really like how everything seems to be faster in this version and solid. So I like it. I was going to ask a related question, though. Which version will we see and experience a improvement in the upgrade process? I know you've been working hard on it. My experience was a bit rough trying to get it upgraded.
Yeah, so I know that we're working on the upgrade experience. I haven't actually seen that installer working, so I'm going to assume that it's not going to be in 127, and beyond that, I don't know. Just a quick hit on that. The plan is that it will provide more information and better logs and point you directly to things that you should know about during the process rather than going back through the logs. If you don't mind my asking, is there anything that specific that you ran into that would be useful to talk about?
Well, sure, as long as you understand, I'm not trying to badmouth the product, but my experience was, um, I knew I had to install all the hotfixes before proceeding to the next version. And in my experience, if I check the checkbox that says install all, then that's not going to work. It starts pulsating, but then it never ever stops. It just goes on forever. I can go to lunch. I can go out to lunch, come back,
So a little false positive going on there.
Yeah, and so I've interrupted it just by refreshing the page, and then
Mhm.
I would do them one at a time. And sometimes it would pulse forever, and I'd have to restart again. Other times it would work. And you could put a checkbox on the left side to choose the hotfix that you'd like to install. And then there's a button that says install the check once. So that sometimes worked, but sometimes it didn't. And then I would have to go over to the button over on the right on one of the hotfix lines, and it says install this hotfix. And sometimes that would work when the other one wouldn't. So it was a bit of a guessing game and a bit of a time involved guessing game because I'd have to wait a while to see which, if it was going to kick in and do something or not.
So there's
Yeah.
So there's some feedback that I can give with that, but first I want to go into problem solving mode. Do you know whether there's volume going on that site while you're trying to upgrade it?
Traffic.
Traffic, yeah.
Well, I wasn't hitting it. Let's see. It's possible that people were visiting pages. I don't think that they would be using plant and app features, but maybe.
And it really doesn't. So let's see. I think one of the things that we've experienced is, and we're trying to solve with the new installer, is that when the when an installation is taking place and users hit the site at the same time, that can interrupt the installer. I'm not sure that that's what's going on in your case, but that's something that we will be improving with that in new installer. But the thing that you described with hit and miss installations, I think you were experiencing, there is a hit and miss aspect to that. And I can help you do it faster, but also maybe explain a little bit. So I guess it'd be useful to have any site up here so we can look at updates. So this is configuration updates and hotfixes. And good, we have one. So there's this install all button. So you can click this and then say install all. There is an install button where you can install them one at a time. And so you were kind of talking about doing those in different combinations and getting sometimes working, sometimes not. I
True.
think what you're encountering is sometimes working and sometimes not.
Mhm.
And I don't think it matters how you invoke it. There is this characteristic of um, sometimes it can fail. And so it's showing the installation, the pulsating logo and not making progress. I would advise that if you've gone for um, more than 30 seconds, I mean, your sites can vary, right? If you have a very low CPU attached to it, or it's a very large site, maybe it's taking longer than that. But if you're, it should go relatively quickly, and you should see some progress that indicates that things have been installed and your site is restarting. Let's look at the experience. I'll go ahead and install this enhancement. I'm going to do it through the install selected, and yes. So we get the bouncing icon. After, let's say, a minute, if you haven't seen progress here, I do recommend that you refresh the screen. If it's still installing, then it'll complete the install. You're in the DNN restart process, and it just takes a while. But if the site instantly refreshes, then it's a failed installation and time to try again.
That helps.
And I think I would, if your intention is to install them all, I would repeat the attempt to install them all. And in my case, in my experience, typically, um, if it doesn't work this first time, it works the second time and it's done. Yep. We don't, so you saw that flashing. So now this is the part where it's doing the DNN restart. So the first was um, the time it took to install, and then now we're getting the refresh. When we install things, almost always it triggers a system restart, and then your time on a system, but it's the same thing as hitting this server restart application button, and you'll probably have a sense of how long that takes. Anyway, you're not going to hurt it by doing the refresh after a minute or so and seeing if it comes back.
Okay, that's good to know.
And that's certainly one of the things we're trying to address with that. So it's you're pointing to one of the problems that we know about.
But just to clarify, you're saying that install all hotfix at one time is totally fine. That's not introducing the possibility of problems, right?
It's not.
Okay.
On the other hand, just to kind of get a sense of what's going on behind the scenes, though, when you install hotfixes, it's downloading them from our servers onto your server and then running an install, triggering the install process. So for every hotfix that's listed, it's downloading a zip file onto your server. If you have any problems with, and I think we might have a contribution to that, maybe we can check this. But if your sites are having problems connecting to our servers and you're getting hit and miss, that could be one of the reasons. Let's. Yeah, we have this download test. It's a PowerShell. So if you're seeing that all the time, and I don't know, are your sites all hosted in one spot or are they all over the place?
One spot.
Okay. Um, this PowerShell script is something that you can run that, and it describes how to run it here, and the result should be a particular file of a particular size. So if you run this 5 times and get the file every time, then I would say download is not the problem. But if you run it 5 times, and this would be from your server, right? So that you're getting it, you're simulating. If you run this PowerShell locally, you're going to be downloading it to your local instance. You want to do this on your server. If you're running it 5 times and it doesn't always work, then this would be something to go and we can try to help with. But this is what it's doing behind the scenes, going and grabbing these multiple megabyte files from our server and getting them all lined up before it installs them.
Okay, thank you.
At least that's something to try and look at. But yeah, so when you're doing the install all, it's doing as many hotfixes as there are. It's doing that download on the different ones. So aside from if you're having download problems, it doesn't really change the scenario. It actually, I think it would be faster because you're gonna get them and then it's just going to be one install, one restart versus 5. Obviously, you know how long it takes if you do them one at a time.
Yeah, I'd much prefer to do it all the time.
Um,
Can I trust it to handle if there's a particular order they should be installed in, it'll handle that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than, in some cases, we will make notes on the hotfixes that says install this first. If you're getting those kind of instructions in the hotfix, then so now I guess I'm
And that's a
backtracking the
manual.
first answer. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's going when you do install all, it's going to install all of them. If there's special worded instructions that says do this first, you really need to do those first manually.
All right. Thank you.
Good questions. See, I
Good stuff.
provoked something.
Something along the same lines, if I may.
Please.
Just to be sure, because Thanksgiving weekend is coming up, that's probably a good time for some of my clients to get upgraded to 126. Is hot fixes first, all hot fixes to bring it all the way up to the most of 125 and then do the 126?
That's the recommendation.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I don't remember exactly when we started enforcing that, but and it might be in 126, but I know it in 126 we enforce that you install them all before you upgrade. So that's what we consider our best practice at this point.
Makes sense.
Good question. And I see, yeah, Donna's posted in the chat that data 9.13.5 is released. 19.13.6 has a release candidate out. So, yep.
So with your work to test DNN along with 127, you got a moving target.
Of course. Well,
Check in with Daniel Velatus, who is doing all of the, he does all of the releases. Check with him and see, what's the plan after 6? Is there 7 just waiting to get out, or is he going to be? I know there's also talk of version 10. So, and will there be a 14 before there'll be a 10? I don't know.
You're much more tuned into that than I am, but I'll mention this in our product team. I know we're testing with, we're doing all of our development against some version. I believe it's 9.13.3. Certainly we want to get up to the 9.13 level. And I guess on that point, we, as of yesterday, I asked the question, and we think we should have a beta for this in early January. So if you're going to participate in that, that's when we expect to get into that.
Great.
All right. Have I sparked anybody else have something that they want to share yet before I go on and try and dig something else out?
I'll tell you quickly, Dale, I use your little keyboard keystroke, I don't know, tip on clearing those check boxes so that if something in a listing only appears in the detail view. So thanks for sharing that. I know it's a simple, small little thing, but it makes me happy.
Well, you know, we're all looking to save a couple of seconds here and there, or minutes.
It's amazing how we can be aware of a few keystrokes or clicks, and it becomes important somehow.
And just for anybody who's going to be watching it after the fact, of course, you could watch a week ago episode, but the idea was that standard keyboard shortcut is that when you're focused on something and you hit the tab, it's going to change the focus to the next item, and the space can manipulate a checkbox. So being able to navigate that without trying to focus the mouse 5 times is can save you something. Being an old DOS guy, I got all these keyboard things, or lots of them. And then I went out and bought a keyboard that lets me record some macros, which is kind of cool. So when you get those things that are repetitive, you can do that all at once.
I watched what you just did, but didn't know what you were doing on your keyboard, didn't quite understand it. You're saying that if you uncheck one and then you tab and space, you clear
Right.
the...
So when I click here, I am
Right.
moving my focus onto that box. So
Correct.
while there's not really a nice visual indication when I'm focused on that box, from there, when I hit the space bar, since that's where my focus is, every time I hit the space bar, it changes and I can move my mouse away here to show that I'm hitting the space bar. Then when I hit tab, the focus always moves, at least in a US standard left to right manner. So now I've hit the tab key and I'm focused on mobile. Space bar will change that. So I can hit tab space, tab space, tab space. And if I kept going, I could tab again, and I'm down to allow HTML. So if you're fighting with those checkboxes, that's one way to do it.
Got it.
Good. Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. All right. Let's see what else I can provoke here. I put down a new Campfire contributions for daily table maintenance, and this is one we've talked about before, so it is not new, but it is something that a client is talking about, asking about, and so I thought I would hit on it real quickly. There's a number of tables within Plant an App that you might want to truncate from time to time, and so we have this automation that you can use to do it. I have this already installed on my system, but I'm just going to demonstrate for anybody who wants to take advantage of this. You can copy this, whatever's in this automation export job, and then find your way to your system on the automation tab. You can turn right around and import that onto your site. And so you say import, not import from DNN, but import, and paste all that content in. And it's going to create a job on your site, and it's going to come in disabled by default. We don't want to start running it for you automatically, but all you have to do, you can edit it for your purposes and then enable it. So I'm going to edit it and just show what's inside. The one that we have has a trigger that repeats every day. I've picked a time and days of the week that I want it to run. You don't have to change any of this. There's a create update tokens on the top that has number of days to keep, and the default is 30. If you like that, that's fine. But these history tables are going to be records older than that are going to be deleted. So we'll look at one. One of them we recommend cleaning up the data from is the Plantain app audit DNN API endpoint. This is every time somebody runs an API, it puts a record out into this table. So depending on how much you rely on DNN API endpoints, this could get big. So it deletes where the execution time is less than whatever days you want to keep. And so this, and then it returns a number of rows. And so that were deleted. And so you can, it does this for scheduler history, event log, schedule history. You could add your own tables here if you have some tables that you think need to be cleaned up based on a date. And then I'm logging all this just so we can go out and see that what it accomplished. So you have some record of what it did. So if you have that issue, you can just install that automation and turn it on. And so it's as simple as clicking the enable job button, and it would be good to go. I've already got one in here, so I'm going to delete this job, which you highlight and then delete. So that's something that you can do if you need it. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, Jim's back. Welcome back, Jim.
Hello.
Hey, Dale, would you pop the URL for that in the chat, please? I think that's really nice.
If I can find it. Where did I? Well, I've got it here. So let's do this. We will copy it.
Just want to put in a plug for this. I've installed it on one of my sites and it works great. And I absolutely love it. So thank you very much, Dale. Much appreciated.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, likewise. We've talked about this many times, and we've approached the topic and had tips, and this puts it all together. So nice and packaged.
We have happen to have a client that the database has grown very large. It's, if you don't know about these things, if you don't maintain them and you are running Plantain app for years and years, database just starts getting unexplainably larger. And then once you find these, it solves it. In this case, the backups for the client, because the database has grown beyond the amount of available disk space, there isn't enough room to make a copy of the database, and then backups are failing. So this can be quite important. Good. There was a community forum one that I thought was, I'm going to clean up my world here just a little bit and we can go into this one. And thanks for those that took time to answer this community question. It was all about how to make a field to calculate cost. So this was posted by Aaron, and he's doing some work in Action Form and using PayPal. So Action Form is our older product. You can do this in our forms in Plantain app. All this applies to the forms product within Plantain app as well. So he was trying to compute, and based on certain formula, trying to compute, and then he ended up finding a formula that worked for him. But Mark, you commented what I think about about 3 different ways to do this: the on change of the checkbox, the JavaScript, an API call. That was a good one. And you know, as we've talked before, I'm kind of a low coder. My go-to is to create actions and put them into a button to compute these kinds of things, and then you can visually see the result. And then, as you suggest, hiding the you could hide the button, hide the computation stuff, and do it automatically. So I piled on and used some of your same stuff, just pointing out that you did a contribution about running a button that would.
That's fun. I forgot that.
Yeah, you had it in having to do with loading a form, but this I come back to this one all the time to know how to you know, you can put this little bit of code into the on change of any like a text element or whatever to force things to happen, and so you can low code a solution that goes out and gets that.
Cool.
Just have to know that the 3 digits here, that's actually your form number, whatever your form ID is, and the save is the name of the button that you want to click. So you can click a button from a little bit of code.
And we could address that in different ways that don't involve knowing the form ID. Like the example back on the contribution page, I think it doesn't need to know what form ID it is or module ID.
I'm sorry, which one?
The contribution that you brought up to start the conversation, one from Aaron, the one I helped on, how to make a field that calculates there. So there's the syntax that you could put in the same place in that little set timeout, and that doesn't need the module ID.
Very good. So then the button is calc.
Yeah, the button is named calc. Yes.
And a reminder that all JavaScript is case sensitive, so you got to match up exactly the name of the button. Right. I'm advancing on. I encountered a ghost story, and I don't mean to take over. If anybody has one you want to get in, now's the time. I had a ghost story this week. And yeah, this is a cutting edge site. I'm going to have to install software before we can get it to run. This is a site running our new 127 version. And every time a developer submits a new piece to the puzzle, it triggers our missing dependencies. So that's the problem with bleeding edge. But I happen to do this demonstration in 127, so we'll get there. The issue is that you know, workflows, you have input parameters, and then I was trying to do something where I was returning a value for that was I wanted to pass in a user ID to the workflow and then do some computation using that user and then get the answer. And what I was finding was I was getting nothing. And I'll tell you the end of the story first. The end of the story is that if that the user entity has some roles associated with it that and some permissions that are connected to it. And to me, the security is a little bit higher than it needs to be. But the result is that certain things don't run if you're just a regular user. You can't find out. You can't run a workflow. You can't run a workflow. That's what. All right. So we're still working through this. And what made it worse in my case was that I was actually, once I built the workflow, and I mean, here's one of our normal patterns, right? Build a workflow so that you may have some nice discrete code that you can call and reuse. And then I happened to call it by way of a workflow token, which was cool. So now whenever I need, and actually what I was trying to return was a list of items that can be used in a drop down. So it was returning back values and the pipe character and or so text, pipe character, value, a series of those. And it was working just fine when I worked on the workflow. It was working fine when I worked on the token, but when I went to the form to try and use that thing, it was returning nothing. And it's all about this entity user. All right, so here's a workflow to illustrate the problem. I have an input. Notice, by the way, we're on 127 and workflows look a little different. We have settings and input and then process and output. All the stuff that was up here before has been moved down here. Anyway, so we have an input and I'm calling it, I want to run this workflow for a user. I have the type is of type user. And the process, I actually have no process here, just a start and an end. And for output, I'm using, I want to display, because I have a user ID in, all the fields from all the properties of the user are available. So I was going to grab the display name. Just illustrating the problem. So if I pass it any user, I get the display name as a result. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so to illustrate the problem, I have form. Honestly, I have a form here. And if I pass it a user ID, it runs my little workflow and gets the display name for, in this case, it's manager user, the display name. So 7 is manager user, and I guess I should illustrate that exactly. If I put 7 is manager user, so it's running this workflow to get that. If I go run this same URL incognito, I'm not logged in, I run it and I get I don't get a display name, I do get a bunch of error messages. So because I'm not logged in, the workflow won't run. What's going on behind the scenes is, and I found you can get into this, so you can see what's going on. You can't change it. User doesn't let you edit it. It's one of our predefined entities. But you can fake your way in by coming into this view and clicking on this edit icon. You can at least see what's in here. So there's the custom properties of user, but we're looking at permissions, and the problem is that all users have no ability to view. And all users is the same thing as not being logged in. So because they can't view the record, that request to the workflow fails and it blows up with an error. It doesn't blow up. It doesn't even return a nice error message. So is this one of those things where I'm telling you guys stuff that you already know? Or am I telling you stuff you don't care about?
Well, we know that it won't let you see data that you don't have permission to see, but this is very precise with the users table. Yeah, it's good to see all the ghost stories. I didn't know that you could get in to see the entity design your back doorway here. That's also fun to know.
And I would say that's an unpublished feature that is not guaranteed to stay
Mhm.
around. But you can't. Nice thing is you can't. It's not even. I assume we'll leave it there. It's read only. You can't make changes to it, so it's non-destructive. But at least you can see what's going on.
Mhm.
So then, kind of, I haven't really built the illustration of this, but I can. Um, if we so the sun then this we'll go into test one here and uh, create a workflow token out of this. Oh, I don't want a namespace. I want a new token called that, and it's in the test one namespace, and it's going to run the workflow. It's going to run. This is the name of the workflow, and we're going to get the display name, save and test, run it for user 7. It's going to get manager user. So it works just fine here. If I go to the front of my website and we'll add a text box. Slowly. Going to leave it hard coded for number 7. Oh, and I have to change the settings to say it's okay to evaluate tokens. So now we get manager user being returned back. If I go into the same site, not logged in, it's returning nothing. Interesting that it's like it's. I would have expected to see the greater than and less than there, which makes me think it's blowing up. I hadn't tested this in advance. So it just blows up the token mechanism and you're getting nothing, which was kind of my experience that um, the failure was something that um, it was returning nothing as a token and it's actually blowing up the token replacement and not getting any output in that, which would be an odd symptom. So anyway, it's a in this case, it's an easy solution for what we wanted to do. And that is that you can change the instead of using if you must have a case where you're running a workflow from somewhere that is public, doesn't have any rights, you have two options. One, you can use a load user action to elevate to some other user so that does have permissions. Alternately, you can code your workflow as don't use the um, don't use the user type, but rather have it be an integer or a text, and then you have to do your own work to retrieve the user. So, or whatever it is that you're going to do. So in my case, I wasn't actually trying to take advantage of anything. I knew I was passing in a user ID that I was going to use in some SQL. So I didn't really even need to use the user type. I just did out of habit, and then it was blowing up. So changing it to text solved my problem, and the whole thing just began to work. But I just want to say I experienced the same thing that you do, that, you spend an hour banging your head against the wall for something that seems simple and you don't quite know your way out of it.
Thanks for showing that, Dale.
Good. All right, I think that this is the last of what I had prepared, so it's a great time to jump in. And Ben, always polite, raised his hand.
Just speaking of ghost stories, as you are aware about my ghost story with regards to the server request.
Yes.
So I just wanted to throw out there, if anyone's using server requests and you happen to be using it inside an automation, be sure to add in the type of request that it is, whether it be a get or a put or anything like that. Because if you leave that blank, which the system will allow you to do, you would think that it would default to like get, but it defaults apparently to a non-usable value. But here's the ghost story part of it. It crashes with that non-usable value only when the automation triggers by itself on whatever you set as the trigger. If you manually run the automation by going to the automation tab and hitting the play button, it does not crash. So that was driving me crazy because I was testing my automation manually and it was working. But then when I re-enabled the trigger, which was like a 5-minute trigger, every 5 minutes when it triggered on its own, it would crash. And it wasn't until I set that HTTP method to get, manually set it to get and saved it, then it no longer crashed.
So, first of all, great ghost story. I had never heard of such a thing, and makes no sense to me that when you're, or it didn't before this, that in automation, when you have the ability to trigger things manually. So it doesn't matter what the job is. I could run this job immediately, or they can run based on the result of whatever the trigger that you add, like a time trigger. It had never occurred to me that running this way, you have one experience, and running by clicking the run button would give you a different experience. So talking to Bogdan and crew about that, they mentioned something about HTTP context, that perhaps by clicking this button, it's passing along a context that happened to impact server request, but the trigger didn't. The cron trigger didn't. It kind of made sense to them that it was possible that you'd get a different result based on whether you're running as a trigger or clicking the button. But the underlying issue is that when you get down to, that was the ghost story part. When you get down to using the server request action, the main thing is when this opens up, it defaults to being to not selecting an HTTP method, and yet that's key to running a server request. You got to tell it what it is that you're doing. From a product perspective, we are changing to in future, when you create a server request action, it's going to force you to pick one of these things, and if you don't, it's going to default it for anything that was created prior to when we do our fix. It will create it. It will assume it's a get, and will no longer blow up in the way that Ben did. So sorry you had to go through that, and thanks for reporting it. And we are going to fix it.
That is a good ghost story.
I've struggled
And
with. Go ahead. Sorry.
you please do finish up on it. I have another ghost story.
No, I was just going to say that I have struggled with this before. This kind of sits, and depending on the UI that you're using, this kind of sits quietly and doesn't make you pick, and if you're not thinking about it, um, it's pretty easy to skip. Sometimes I think that about some of our parameters and some checkboxes and things that are a little bit hard to spot. And this one has gotten me several times where I'm trying to do a post. I know I need to do a post, but I just didn't pick anything. And then you fight with it a little bit and then you figure it out. But Ben's case is worse because he's trying to do it through an automation. Anyway, I just can completely identify.
Mhm.
Okay. So Mark, you were starting in, and Don's got his hand raised. I don't know who to
Yeah.
call.
I sat here and tried to figure out how to raise my hand, and I haven't figured it out yet. So, um, my ghost story is something we talked about before, Dale, and probably even here in the meeting. Um, I do use the PayPal action, and it was changing the password in my API keyword and password. And I figured out what was doing that. And it turns out it is the Chrome password keeper, not any additional password keeper that I have, and not any other extraneous extension in the browser, but it was the Chrome keyword manager. But what was interesting was if you go and manage the password manager, it tells you that the username that it was matching against was something called previewer. Now, that's actually a valid user in several of my systems, but I don't know why it was matching that username with the API password. But there you go. It was Chrome all along.
And I think this one resurfaced because we had somebody, I think maybe Aaron posted about the same thing on the community forum, that he was, as soon as he edited a PayPal action, it was breaking.
Yeah.
And
Which is a real ghost.
yes, and because the password is hidden, I'm stalling until I get there here, right? But
All right.
because the password manager is paying attention to password type fields and the password. So let's find it here. Okay, finally. What's the PayPal Express?
Express.
And in here, there's a place for API
password.
username, API password.
Yeah.
And so the password manager, you can see it's trying to fill it in. And this, whatever you type in this field, is hidden from you. So if the password manager jumps in and makes a change on you, it's very hard to see that it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of an insidious little problem that's browser based.
Just opening the action will cause it to make that change. So if you don't open this action, you're good with this issue.
And then the way that we end up finding this, if you export the action and it puts it in a JSON format, you can see what the password is. And so that reveals that what you've typed there or what's in that box is not really what you intended. And then you can kind of find it. But it is ugly that the browser jumps in and changes that without you're
Yeah.
intending to do so.
Right. And I don't know why it was choosing the password username associated with previewer. Like
But you
there's
put
other
in,
passwords in there and it doesn't choose those. So
but you put in a support ticket to Google and expect an answer any moment now.
let's move on to Don.
Hey, Don.
Hopefully this is quick. As far as an automation trigger is concerned, um, should the on misfire pretty much always be fire now? I've got last week I told you about the problem of the cron trigger, and you had the solution of keep alive. This one I've got a different one that just is the standard repeat daily trigger, and I got it set for 9 a.m. But then my thought was, shouldn't it just be fire now all the time then? I mean, if on the rare occasion that it doesn't go off, it should go off as soon as possible thereafter, rather than blank. And what is if it's blank? Is it fire now if it's blank? Is that the default?
I assume the default is do nothing, but I really don't know.
Got it.
So I think your question is, what's the use case for do nothing?
Yeah, exactly. Why would you not want to run it? Because there's got to be logic behind there that says repeat daily. Okay, I've repeated it, so I'm not going to do this anymore today. So that it's got to run once sometime today, whether it's at 12 a.m. or 12:01 or 12:50 or.
So looking at this help behind the on misfire kind of gives me a clue about the use case, which would be, so we're expecting this to happen. We're expecting this to happen exactly at a precise time. If the automation that you're dealing with were reliant on the precise time that you're trying to synchronize with something else, and it had to happen at a precise time, and didn't, it might be in your use case to say, well, now it's not going to work. I'm going to have to do something else. So I think it's probably a rare use case that for a more standard use case is I'm going to generate a report or do something, and I don't care if it happens a couple of minutes late. But if you're launching a rocket and the window is closed and I'm being facetious with saying launching a rocket. If you're trying to interact with some other system that was highly dependent on time, then you might have a case for do nothing.
But like the keep alive kind of a thing, it's possible that the site has gone asleep and it may not wake up until the next person goes to it. So if the keep alive is going, then it seems that at that point the only issue would be that that there was no job available, which even that is a rarity, but still that seems like it's the only reason. So you should go ahead and fire it off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And yeah,
I had a strange
I agree
situation with this one. Mine, I had it set for 5 a.m., which I think realizing that it was a UTC time, I started seeing that it's a birthday trigger. We send a birthday greeting out to our members on their birthday, and what's happening was it was firing off at 11 o'clock at night the night before, and I said, "What's going on?" And it's just that with the time change, I had it set where it was going at 12 o'clock UTC, 12 o'clock my time. 5 o'clock UTC, and now that's actually 11 o'clock my time. So firing off well, actually, it was firing off that night, late that night, not the night before.
Yeah, it's those UTC versus time change things. Those are always we get a lot of difficulty in that area. So that's yeah. Maybe you want to send it off at 6 a.m. and call it good enough.
That's exactly what I actually bumped it up to 9 a.m. So if it's somewhere between 2 and 3 is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we've hit the end of our hour. Nobody else has their hands raised, so I'm going to find my way to my end slide here, and then bid you good day. This has been a you've helped me fill the hour. We get better because we get together. So thanks for doing that. Glad to see all of you, and hang around for a few minutes for Afterglow if you like. Other than that, we'll be back here next Friday, and Patrick will be back. Thanks all.